People of Argentina, your newly elected president, Juan Peron.
The second act of the musical begins a few months after Peron's arrest and release in 1946, as Peron has just been elected president. Peron states that his goals are fighting poverty, social injustice, and foreign domination of our industries. Indeed, Peron's stated goals in his presidency were social justice and economic independence. He wanted reform and for Argentina to be a powerhouse on the world stage. He instructed his economic advisor to develop a 5-year plan with the goal of increasing workers' pay, achieving full employment, stimulating industrial growth of over 40% while diversifying the sector, greatly improving transportation, communication, energy, and social infrastructure. It's a shame that Peron was such a terrible person because his goals were genuinely good. It's funny to me how politics can be so skewed. You get people like Juan who are, want the working class to rise up and succeed, but also think it's okay to commit genocide. Baffling to me. The song also shows Juan introducing Evita, who by then was his wife, to his supporters, and she decides to make a speech of her own.
Don't cry for me, Argentina. The truth is I never left you.
Musicals always have those big numbers that are there for award bait and don't really do much, and Don't Cry For Me, Argentina is one of them. There isn't really much to relate it to historically. Essentially, the song is Eva saying, "Don't be fooled by the rocks that I got, I'm still Eva from the block." She tells the descamisados that even though she's rich and living in the Casa Rosada, she still knows how it feels to be like them, and she hopes that they can still accept her as one of the working class. Like I say, there isn't really something to relate this to. Eva never stood on the Casa Rosada balcony and said anything of that ilk. But this musical's about her, so I suppose she needs a big powerful power ballad so that we can put it on many, many compilation albums for years to come.
Just listen to that, the voice of Argentina. We are adored, we are loved.
Statesmanship is more than entertaining peasants.
We shall see, little man.
Of course, after just pouring her heart out to the public, Eva turns to Peron's men and reveals how thrilled she is to be adored by the people. She then turns back to the people and talks again of how she's one of them, how they will take the riches from the oligarchs and give them to the descamisados. We also see the aristocrats from earlier back again, mentioning how the privileged class is dead and Eva is the new hero of the nation. All of this reinforces the idea that Eva was this manipulative, power-mad woman who wanted to be Peron's right-hand woman. Eva did famously make a speech on the balcony of the Casa Rosada, but that's not for another 5 years. So at this point in time, she definitely wasn't as much of a public figure as the musical makes her out to be, but she was still significant because she was the First Lady of Argentina. And that's still an important job regardless.
High flying adored, so young, the instant queen, a rich, beautiful thing of all the talent, a cross between a fantasy of the bedroom and a saint.
Here we have Shay returning as Eva's conscience. Kind of. In this song, he asks Evita if this was her plan all along, to become a political powerhouse, beloved by all of Argentina. Was it always fame that she'd wanted, and when acting didn't work out, she pursued Juan Peron to see if being his wife could be any better. Shay also mentions that when you hit the height of fame at the age of 26, there is nowhere to go but down. Evita refutes this and says that she's just like any other small town girl who marries a famous man, that it was all a case of being in the right place at the perfect time. But she is the only woman for the job. This ties into this common perception of Eva that she married Juan for the fame and not for love. It's basically a song about the price of fame, that everything that you have can be taken from you in a second, especially when you're a celebrity. Of course, he or she is talking about her falling out of grace, her becoming a pariah, but in reality, Eva did lose everything. She was drained of all energy, not by the loss of her fame and fans, but by her cancer.
The people, they need to adore me. toes. I need to be dazzling, I want to be rainbow high. They must have excitement, and so must I.
The next section of the musical focuses on Evita's famous Rainbow Tour. But before she can go on tour, she needs to work on her public image. To go on a rainbow tour, you must be rainbow high. This song really is all about Eva's image, the fact that she had to look perfect at all times. She wasn't just a political figure, she was an icon. She was glamorous, she was prim and proper, she was adored. The aspects that Eva's glam squad focus on are, and I quote, eyes, hair, mouth, figure, dress, voice, style, movement, hands, magic, rings, glamour, face, diamonds, exciting, image. Eva mentions that she wants to wear Christian Dior on the tour, and in real life, Eva famously wore a Christian Dior ball gown in 1951. There's even an essay I found online titled How Eva Peron's Style Influenced Politics. Eva's princess-like persona inspired the Argentine people. Politics is generally seen as stuffy, and in Argentina it was also particularly militaristic. It involved a lot of coups, a lot of fighting, a lot of destruction. It wasn't just people in offices having conversations, it was literal rioting on the streets and people trying to kill each other. But Eva, she was this blonde beauty in a glittery Parisian ball gown. It changed the way politics was perceived in Argentina. And in the song, Eva describes herself as a product to be sold, and in many ways she was. She was put on this pedestal to encourage the masses to join Peron's cause, to show them that politics wasn't so far removed from real life. Here's Eva Peron, look how gorgeous she is, and she's one of you. This is the life that you can have if you follow Juan Peron. The song also says a lot about how Eva has changed, and it's actually a bit of a contradiction to what she says in Don't Cry For Me Argentina. In Don't Cry For Me Argentina, she says all that stuff about, and as for fortune and as for fame, I never invited them in, although it seemed to the world they were all I desired. But to be honest, listening to her go on and on here about wanting to be the next Lauren Bacall, it's hard to believe that she didn't want fame and fortune. But anyway, with her jacked up, it's time for the Rainbow Tour.
Let's hear it for the Rainbow Tour. It's been an incredible success. We weren't quite sure, we had a few doubts. Will Evita win through? But the answer is yes.
The Rainbow Tour was probably the most significant event in Eva Peron's life. It began in 1947 with Eva embarking on a tour of Europe, meeting with foreign dignitaries and heads of state of various countries. But the backstory behind the tour is actually quite complicated. So what happened was that General Francisco Franco, Spanish dictator from 1939 to 1975, invited Juan Perón for a state visit to Spain. After the chaos in Argentina with the JOU and the string of presidents being overthrown, Argentina had only just recovered enough favour to be allowed into the United Nations. It was considered political suicide to accept the invitation from Franco, but Eva was determined that she wanted to accept it. As a result, the Argentine government decided that Eva should visit a range of European countries during her trip to Europe, so it didn't look like the Perons were in cahoots with the Francoist Spain. So really, the tour was actually one big cover-up. But it was branded as this non-political goodwill tour. Really, Eva just wanted to meet with General Franco, and I don't really know why. General Franco was also a dictator. Now, we know that Juan Perón is a big fan of fascism and dictators, but I don't know why Eva was so determined to meet with him, and I can't really find any evidence specifically for why. But anyway, they invented this whole tour where she trekked around all of Europe meeting all of these dignitaries just so that she could explain why she wanted to have tea with General Franco. Sometimes people have more money than sense, you know what I mean? Anyway, on to the tour. As the song suggests, Eva began her tour in Spain. She met with General Franco and handed out 100 peseta notes to poor children that she met while touring the country. While she was in Spain, she received the highest award from General Franco, the Order of Isabella the Catholic. Spain loved her. As the song states though, anyone was considered better than General Franco. You know, he was a fascist dictator. Fun fact, in the movie, the line is, "She's the lady of the New World with the golden touch," but in the actual stage show, the line is, "She's the New World Madonna with the golden touch." They changed it in the movie because it seemed really cringy, considering Evita was being played by a woman named Madonna. That always makes me laugh. Next up on the tour was Italy. Eva visited Pope Pius XII and expected to be given a papal order of chivalry, the same way that she'd gotten an order of the Isabella the Catholic while she'd been in Spain. But as the song says, she only received a silver rosary from the Pope. Even so, she was given the time with the Pope that was normally granted to queens, so all was not lost. However, Peron was not as favourable in Italy. As the song states, the Italians saw Peron as another Mussolini, which of course he was. Mussolini was Peron's idol. He was a fascist dictator too. I don't know that they called Eva a whore the way that she says in the song, but she certainly wasn't as popular as she was in Spain, and Peron was definitely not popular in Italy. The next stop on the tour was France, where she met with Charles de Gaulle. De Gaulle had led Free France against Nazi Germany, so it's ironic that the Nazi sympathising Perons wanted to meet with him, but that's politics, I suppose. Eva ended up promising France 2 shipments of wheat from Argentina, so there's that. But it was during her friendship that Eva found out that King George VI of Britain had refused to meet with her if she visited Britain, and that her planned visit would not be classed as a state visit as a result. Eva was furious and cancelled the whole trip, but she claimed to the media it was because she was just so exhausted from all her travelling. Okay, Eva. Sure, Jan. An area which is bizarrely missing from the song is Eva's visit to Switzerland, which is regarded as the worst leg of the trip. It's said that while Eva was in a car driving down a crowded street, someone threw stones at the vehicle and smashed the windscreen. And then later, while she was meeting with the foreign minister, people threw tomatoes at Eva and stained her dress. By that point, Eva had understandably had enough of the Rainbow Tour and decided to go home. At the time, people claimed that the Perons went to Switzerland to deposit money in a Swiss bank account, but people have pointed out, quote, "There are many more convenient and less conspicuous ways of depositing money in Swiss accounts than meeting with the Swiss foreign minister and being shown around a watch factory," unquote. And I can't help but agree with that. During the Rainbow Tour, Eva was featured on the front cover of Time magazine, which was the first time a South American First Lady had got a cover story all of her own. However, the magazine ended up revealing that Eva had been born out of wedlock, so the Argentine government banned the magazine for several months and it wasn't allowed to be sold in Argentina. So that didn't work as well as they would have hoped. After returning from the tour, Eva dropped that glamorous persona that she'd built and started wearing tailored suits, the kind of Hillary Clinton style, you know, you've got a jacket, you've got a long skirt. She had a severe updo, her hair was always scraped back, really scraped away from the face, and she became really attached to Parisian couture. That was her go-to style. And so the tour was a moderate success, but definitely not the resounding wonder that the Perons had expected it to be. They thought that Eva would go out and just be showered with love and adoration everywhere she went, and in reality they discovered that they're not as popular as they thought they were with the rest of Europe. If they wanted to build connections with their other allies, they were going to need to do a bit more work to get there.
The actress hasn't learned the lines you'd like to hear. She won't join your clubs. She won't dance in your halls.
This song looks at Eva's downfall after the disastrous trip to Switzerland. Eva's feeling downhearted at her treatment and says that she won't keep doing charity work if no one's going to appreciate it. Shay fights back, saying that the poor of Argentina are still poor, and if Eva won't help them, then it's clear that she was only ever in this for herself. But Eva responds that it doesn't matter, that she'll be able to fix it all when she starts her new foundation. Enter the Fundación Eva Peron.
And the money kept rolling in from every side.
This song focuses on Eva's controversial charity foundation. The Maria Eva Duarte de Peron Foundation was founded on the 8th of July 1948. The foundation's aims were to provide monetary assistance and scholarships to gifted children from impoverished backgrounds, build homes, schools, hospitals and orphanages in unprivileged areas, and to contribute or collaborate by any possible means to the creation of works tending to satisfy the basic needs for better life of the less privileged classes. And yes, I read that all out. Initially, work began with nothing more than garden parties for single mothers or Evita's personal trips to the ghettos of Buenos Aires to hand out aid parcels. But soon it actually ended up gaining funds of over 3 billion pesos. She had $200 million on the exchange rate, employed over 14,000 workers, purchased 500,000 sewing machines, 400,000 pairs of shoes, and 200,000 cooking pots for distribution annually, and succeeded in building numerous new houses, schools, hospitals, and orphanages. The vast majority of those funds came from willing donors and the Peronist-dominated Congress, who were keen to back the First Lady's endeavours. The trade unions, who saw Evita as their patron, regularly sent enormous contributions for the foundation's work, and more importantly, the Catholic Church had endorsed her project, citing biblical exhortations towards charity for the poor, and Evita's own personal priest, Father Benitez, claimed that the need to help the poor had overtaken Eva Peron's life. Finally, Congress assisted in 1950 by ruling that a proportion of all lottery and cinema tickets sold, as well as all gambling games played in casinos, should be given to the foundation. And by the time of Eva's death in 1952, the popularity of the foundation amongst her millions of followers had given her an aura of sainthood. And that was all a direct quote from Wikipedia. Just want to cite my sources there. However, there were criticisms and allegations made against the foundation. People said that most of the foundation's wealth was ill-gotten, with Eva coercing people into donating. That is what the "it should have been a voluntary cause" line in the song refers to. One particularly infamous case was the Moo Moo Sweet Company, who were temporarily shut down after they refused to give the foundation a free donation of sweets for underprivileged children. There was, however, only one example of Evita targeting the landed aristocracy, and this was when the foundation received most of the 97 million pesos which the Bemberg dynasty were forced to pay after they had attempted to evade tax paying after their patriarch died abroad. The song implies that the Perons were embezzling money from the foundation, which has never been proven. Historians have proved that on the whole, the foundation was sound and helped far more people than it ever hurt. The majority of the money was gained honestly, and there was nowhere near the corruption that the anti-Peronist protesters have claimed. An older version of the song actually referenced the alleged Swiss bank account, but the verse has been removed since that allegation has been proven false. From what I can gather, the foundation really was the jewel in Eva's crown and helped thousands of people across Argentina. It was the thing that truly gave the descamisados a leg up in society. The controversy was definitely blown out of proportion.
Peron is everything. He is the soul, the nerve, the hope, and the reality of the Argentine people.
Partido Feminista translates to Feminist Party. I think in this instance it's referring to the female Peronist Party rather than the Feminist Party of Argentina. The song reveals Eva's intention to run for vice president of Argentina, which no one in government except Eva and Juan were fans of. Mostly because it meant if Juan died, Eva would be the president. Despite this, Eva was insanely popular with the working class, especially the women, and she had a lot of people who wanted to see her take that job.
She's not a bauble you can brush aside. She's been out doing what we just talked about. Example, gave us back our businesses, got the English out.
She as a Diamond continues with this idea that Juan believes that Eva would be a good choice for the vice presidency, and we see him trying to convince his government why they should agree with him. He explains that the people love Evita, that she is the only person that gives them hope. She actually does things. She's out there helping people while they sit in offices and discuss things and don't do anything. In turn, Peron's government realised that it's Eva who has kept Juan going. She is vital to their government after all. The song also introduces the first clear hints that something is wrong with Eva. after the brief mention of her being tired during the Rainbow Tour. Juan states that Eva is a diamond, and diamonds usually survive. As we know though, Eva will not survive much longer by this point. Despite a massive rally in August 1951, known as the Cabildo Abierto, Eva actually declined the invitation to run for vice president. Eva stated that her only ambition was that in the large chapter of history to be written about her husband, the footnotes would mention a woman who brought the, quote-unquote, hopes and dreams of the people to the president, a woman who had eventually turned those hopes and dreams into glorious reality. This particular event actually had Eva linked to the Hispanic folklore gender concept of Marianismo, portraying her as a selfless being for refusing such an honour like the vice presidency. Whilst Eva did not become vice president, she was given the title of spiritual leader of the nation by Juan on her 33rd birthday in 1952.
Turn a blind eye, Evita. Turn a blind eye.
Santa Evita is a bunch of kids singing what sounds like a hymn about Evita, cementing this idea that Eva had become some kind of godlike figure to the Argentine people. However, in the background of the song, you can hear Shay singing Turn a Blind Eye in the same tune as Do You Now Represent Anyone's Cause But Your Own? Which undermines the value of the song, which, other than that, is nothing but children hurling praise at Evita and asking her to talk to heaven on their behalf. You know, really going in and showing that people of Argentina thought that Eva was a goddess, that she was blessed by the heavens. She wasn't just a person anymore, she was some kind of New Age Jesus.
Tell me before you get onto your high horse just what you expect me to do. I don't care what the bourgeoisie say. I'm not in business for them.
This song is a riot. It appears in a dream sequence where Eva and Shay, unsurprisingly, are waltzing together. It's essentially Eva confronting her reservations about herself. Shay is the one who tells her what she's doing wrong and challenges her on her motivations. And at this point in time, Eva needs to have a conversation with herself as she knows that she can't keep working in the way she is now. Shay asks Eva how she can claim to be their saviour when people are still suffering. Eva hits back that she can't change the world, she's only one person. She asks Shay what he expects her to do. Shay then questions how Eva can be so short-sighted, never looking into the future or having a bigger dream. And of course, we know why. Eva can't plan for the future because she doesn't have one, and she knows that. Eva ultimately tells Shay to go away and whip up his hate elsewhere. In reality though, this is Eva questioning herself. Why hasn't she done more? Why hasn't she saved Argentina? Isn't she the spiritual leader of the nation? Isn't she supposed to be the hero of the Descamisados? Maybe she could have done more, but Eva knows she can't do anything else now. Finally, we find out that Eva is ill and her time is running out, as she says what I still think is one of the most heartbreaking song lyrics I've ever heard. What is the good of the strongest heart in a body that's falling apart? A serious flaw. I hope you know that.
Have you ever seen me defeated? Don't you forget what I've been through, and yet I'm still standing.
Eva, you are dying.
Eva first started showing signs of illness as early as January 1950, when she fainted during a public appearance. She had surgery 3 days later, which her government reported was an appendectomy, but in reality, she was diagnosed with advanced cervical cancer. Please get smear tests, everyone. Eva didn't have that option. They didn't exist back then, but please get your smear tests. Cervical cancer is so preventable these days. Please. Because what Eva went through, as you're about to hear, is absolutely horrific, and I wouldn't wish it on anyone. Get your smear tests. Eva continued to faint throughout 1951, even after the Cabildo Abierto, and she had severe vaginal bleeding and physical weakness in her bones and joints. Despite that, Juan didn't tell Eva what her true diagnosis was, and I have no idea why. But even so, Eva knew she was very sick. It was abundantly clear to her that she was not well. This was the true reason why she rejected the vice presidency. She knew she couldn't work in that condition. It had nothing to do with selflessness or wanting her husband's chapter to tell a story. She just knew that she was too ill to work. In May 1952, Eva was photographed making a speech with Juan holding her up on the balcony of the Casa Rosada. She could no longer stand unaided, and a month later in June, Eva was at a parade with Juan to celebrate his re-election as president. However, under her oversized fur coat was a frame made of wire and plaster which allowed her to stand. It said that she took a triple dose of painkillers before she left for the parade and a double dose when she came home. Eventually, Eva secretly underwent a hysterectomy and had her reproductive organs removed in an attempt to remove the cancer. But unfortunately, the cancer had spread throughout Eva's body. She became the first Argentine ever to undergo chemotherapy, which was still very new in 1952, and the treatment reduced her body weight to just 5 stone and 9 pounds. In this song, Peron explains the situation to Eva as she's still unaware of the severity of her condition. He tells her that while she still maintains her style, she can't keep pushing herself because she will die. And Eva tries to say she's still strong, she's never been defeated yet, but Peron sadly tells her that she's dying. And she heartbreakingly asks, "What happens now? Where am I going to?" To which Peron says, "Don't ask anymore." It's a devastating moment.
Deep in my heart, I'm concealing things that I'm longing to say. Scared to confess what I'm feeling. Frightened you'll slip away. You must love me.
This song was written for the film version of Evita as it was felt that Madonna needed another big Oscar bait ballad on top of Don't Cry For Me Argentina. However, Angela Weber and co. loved the song so much that it's now in the stage version permanently. It's a song from Eva to Juan, a culmination of their love story throughout the show. It's supposed to be the moment where Eva realises that Juan really does love her, that he's not just with her for political gain. In reality, I have no idea if this song holds weight. I somewhat doubt it, as for one, Juan and Eva probably had the worst time of their relationship at the end, since Juan hid her diagnosis from her, and according to a 2011 study of Eva's skull x-rays, Juan might actually have had a lobotomy performed on Eva in the last months of her life. Allegedly, possibly to relieve the pain of her illness, or possibly just because the man was completely deranged. So no, I think they probably did love each other before this point, but if I was Eva, I would have been reconsidering that decision once she started pulling that shit.
Don't cry for me, Argentina. The truth is, I shall not leave you, though it make it harder for you to see me. I'm Argentina, and always will be.
God, this scene is devastating. Eva stands on the balcony of the Casa Rosada to make her final speech to the nation. I'm not sure what real-life event this is supposed to mirror, possibly her 1951 refusal of the vice presidency. From what I can tell, her health deteriorated so quickly from May to July of 1952 that she never managed to make a final broadcast. It seems her last speech was the one in May where Juan held her up, and her final appearance overall was the June parade where she wore the frame. So this song doesn't reflect her real speech, but it's still heartbreaking to listen to. Eva tells the people that whilst they may not see it again, she will always be with them, and she will always be Argentina. As stated in the opening of the show, Eva Peron passed away at 8:25 on Saturday the 26th of July 1952. This song shows the people standing outside the Casa Rosada watching Eva's window intently. When Eva finally slipped away, the light was turned out, signalling to those below that their spiritual leader had left this world. At the end of the song, Shay repeats the words from Oh What a Circus, stating, "She had her moments, she had some style. The best show in town was the crowd outside the Casa Rosada crying Eva Peron, but that's all gone now."
So what use could 50, 60, 70 be? I saw the lights and I was on my way. And how I lived, how they shone, but how soon the lights were gone.
As the song suggests, this is Eva's lament to her lost life. She reminisces on her life, thinks on how when you're young you feel like you have forever, and so she wonders if having a longer life would have made a difference, or did she achieve all she could in her 33 years? She acknowledges that her dedication to her work meant that she never had children of her own, and that she only had the love of the people rather than a love of a family. After Eva's death, she was embalmed at Juan's word. As the song states, all must be preserved. Still life displayed forever. She was then to be placed in a monument larger than the Statue of Liberty. For the 2 years whilst the monument was being erected, her body was displayed in her office at the CGT building. Sadly, before the monument was ever completed, Juan was overthrown in yet another military coup and had to flee the country without his wife's body. The end of this song wasn't included in the film because it's creepy as all hell, but unfortunately the story it tells is actually true. The final verse states that money was raised and a tomb was built, a monument to Evita. Only the pedestal was completed and Evita's body disappeared for 17 years. From 1955 to 1971, the new Argentine dictatorship hid Eva's body and would not reveal its location. Eventually, it was discovered that her body was in a crypt in Milan under a false name and had been damaged during transportation. In 1972, Juan finally got Evita's body back and displayed her in the dining room of his home in Spain. By this point, Juan was married again, so I imagine that made for awkward dinner conversation, having his dead ex-wife lying in the corner of the room. I mean, I often wonder, they say displayed in the dining room, but I'm like, was she the table? Like, that's why I need to know, like, if she was in a glass case, was she the table? Is this like in Rocky Horror when, like, Frankenfurter pulls back the blanket and Eddie's, like, in the table all chopped up? I just get this fear that they were eating dinner off of the dead body of Evita, you know what I mean? Like, I just have this image in my head and it's horrifying. And also, I can't imagine what it'd be like to have dinner with your husband while eating off of his dead wife's body. In 1973, Juan became president of Argentina again, but he died only a year later in 1974. During that time, a terrorist group called Montoneros stole the body of Pedro Eugenio Aramburu and used it as leverage for the repatriation of Eva's body. Juan's wife, Isabel, who had been vice president and had now succeeded Juan as president of Argentina, had Eva's body returned to Argentina and displayed beside Juan. Later, Eva's body was moved yet again to the Duarte family tomb in Buenos Aires, and Eva is now secured in a compartment below another compartment under a tomb through a marble floor with a trapdoor to ensure her body is never taken again. And so, that is the true story of Eva Peron, her life, and the strange travels of her body after her death. But the question still stands. Was Eva Peron really as bad as the show makes out? Was she a godlike being of purity and hope, or was she a harlot witch who played Argentine politics like a fiddle? I think the truth is somewhere in the middle. If we were just talking about Evita, I would be inclined to say she was a good person. She did a lot for charity, she genuinely cared about the people she ruled over, she gave money to poor children, and her foundation truly changed the lives of the people that it donated to. She really did want to raise the working class out of poverty and give them the life they deserved, a life like she had. And for that, I think she must have been good at heart. This isn't the good place. I'm not sending her to the bad place because there's a chance she wanted some level of fame from her charity work and maybe her motivations weren't exactly perfect. She did good, she helped people. I'm going to call her a good person. But the issue is that Eva isn't just Eva. She has a husband, a very influential husband who contributed quite considerably to her charitable efforts. And that was President Juan Peron. Juan Peron was not a good man. He was a fascist dictator. He seized power in a military coup. He idolized Benito Mussolini, and he was a Nazi sympathizer. Actually, no, worse than that. Juan Peron invited the Nazis to take refuge in Argentina to avoid having to attend the Nuremberg trials and answer for their crimes. Like, what the fuck? And also on top of all that, you know, as we know, he was also a paedophile who dated a 13-year-old girl when he was in his late 50s. So, yeah, issues there. And I know that people don't always agree with their partners when it comes to socio-political issues, but we're not talking about someone who voted for Brexit here. We're talking about a Nazi sympathizer. And not even like neo-Nazis or people with Nazi ideals or people that have Nazi tattoos. He invited the actual members of the NSDAP to come to Argentina and avoid standing trial for their crimes against humanity. One of the people he harboured was Joseph Mengele, the man who did the horrific twin experiments at Auschwitz. I think I would draw the line there, you know? Like, if I met a man and he said, hey, I love the working class, I think they deserve better, but also I think Hitler was onto something, eugenics are the future and Mussolini is the coolest dude I've ever known, that would probably be the point where I started stuffing the breadsticks in my purse and running for my life. No, not probably, that definitely would be the moment. And so that's what I struggle with. But it's the fact that everything Eva did was backed by her marriage to a man who was a fascist, who loved Hitler and Mussolini, who agreed with eugenics, who harboured Joseph Mengele. And I don't think you can be with someone with those views unless on some level you agree with them yourself. But I also don't think that necessarily erases the good that Eva did either. At the end of the day, Eva was a woman who wanted to change the world and was cut down before she truly had the chance to achieve her dream. She was only 33 years of age. That's not old. She was still so young. She was only 6 years older than I am now. And she never got the chance to have children. Even if she had survived her cancer, she'd had a hysterectomy. Her life was cruelly ripped from her, and she spent the last 2 years in agony, possibly being forced into lobotomy as well. And regardless of what kind of person she was, she deserved better than that. She could have done so much good with the rest of her life, but we'll never know. We'll never know what she could have gone on to achieve. I think in the end, Eva was a complicated individual who was definitely portrayed in an unnecessarily harsh light in Evita, but was also not an angelic being who never put a foot wrong in life either. She was just a regular person like you or I. Behind all the glitz and the glam and the fashion and all the pandemonium and all the madness, Eva Duarte was just a woman who wanted a better life for herself and those like her. She wasn't a goddess, she wasn't the devil, she was just a working class woman from Junin who was in the right place at the perfect time. But one thing I'll say for her, no one else could do it like she could. Thank you for watching. I hope you've enjoyed today's video. I hope you've enjoyed learning a bit more about the life of Eva Peron. I find Eva Peron one of the most fascinating people who's ever lived, just because of how complicated her life was, how much of a contradiction she is in so many ways, and the way that she has been portrayed so incorrectly in pretty much everything that she's ever been depicted in. She's literally only ever one or the other. She's either portrayed in anti-Peronist literature as this absolute harlot who was the worst thing that ever happened to Argentina, or in Peronist literature she's portrayed as the literal Virgin Mary herself, reincarnated and a being of complete purity who had never done so much as swear in her life because she was so good. And in reality, she's neither. No one is that good, but she also had never done anything to deserve the portrayal as like a literal demon either. She really was just a normal woman doing normal woman stuff. She just happened to be married to a president and have a lot of money while doing it. And so I find her fascinating. I find the way that she's been written about throughout history as fascinating, because she's kind of up there with people like Cleopatra, who, it's this thing that we do particularly get about women, which is that women either have to be perfect or they are harlots, you know? We get that a lot. Hillary Clinton gets it a lot. Hillary Clinton is either the future of women or she is the embodiment of evil. I was going to say Margaret Thatcher, but Margaret Thatcher really was the embodiment of evil, so I'll leave her out of it. But you know what I mean? Meghan Markle. She's either the best thing that's ever happened to British royal family history, or she ruined the royal family hands down and she turned the winds against us. And like I said, Cleopatra was either the greatest pharaoh that ever lived or literally the worst thing that ever happened to ancient Egypt and pretty much brought down the entire dynasty herself. And this is what I mean, is that there is something that happens with women in history where they're either portrayed as perfect beings or evil beings, and there never seems to be the nuance to understand that women are human just like any other person, just like any man, that there are layers, and you get people who are truly evil, you get people who are truly good, but on the whole, you get people who are somewhere in the middle. You get people like Mother Teresa who are literally perfect, you get people like Hitler who are literally evil in every way, and then you get people that are in the middle. And I think you'll find that most people in life are somewhere in the middle. They're not entirely good, they're not entirely bad, they are the medium place. And I think at the end of the day, that's what Evita truly was. She wasn't good, she wasn't bad, she was just her. And that's the aspect of her life that we need to focus on more in the future. And with all women of history, when one day they write books about Hillary Clinton or Meghan Markle, we want them to be balanced. We don't want a book like The Woman in the Whip. We want people to understand that these people did good, they did bad, and they're just normal people at the end of the day. So thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Do leave me a comment below with what you thought, and I will be back sometime in the future with something else for you. But for now, bye bye.